in the USA. It's in the evening here on the West Coast in Seattle, and I'd like to say hi. I hope that you will enjoy this segment. We are on a three-part educational series sharing fundamentals on basically how to write an essay. This morning it was on how to select a school and to get organized. And if you haven't seen that, go on our Facebook page and take a look at it. I think you'll enjoy that. Um, so I'm today our second part is on how to write an essay. And have you ever had to write an essay and you don't know how to start? Well, today you're going to learn how to write an essay, how to get it started, and in particular, the focus is on to when you're applying to universities or colleges. At universities and colleges, they usually call them personal statements. And I used to work in higher ed, and I used to read those personal statements. So when a student is applying, they have to write a personal statement. And it's really a story, and it's for the universities to get to know you. So today with me, I have an expert on it. It's Gina Lee. She's an education consultant, and I have to read this, Gina, just a little bit, your bio, okay?
Sure.
Gina is an independent education consultant who advises both U.S. and international high school students. She is a former director of college counseling and academic dean at an international Los Angeles prep boarding school, a former marketing professional, and a parent of two older children who both attended Harvard College. And she's a graduate of the University of Michigan and completed the UCLA College Counseling Certificate Program with distinction. So I'd like to welcome Gina. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mim. This is a pleasure to be a part of this and try to help as many students as I can. Just a little bit of college essay process, and let's talk about it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, students, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll try to answer any questions, although I'm not seeing the chat, so I don't know what happened. So Mildred, maybe you can see it. Anyways, Gina, so tell us, how do you get started? I think that's the issue. Students, they need to convey and communicate to the universities who they are. So how would they get started?
Okay, let's do a little bit of I want to just make sure that everybody is on the same page. So I may sound like basic 101 at the very beginning, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So I'm going to start with you'll see this next page where we're in a gallery. So imagine we're in a gallery. I always use this idea of this portrait, that every student is painting a portrait of themselves. And the first thing that we want to know is, what's the point? What's the point of the essays, right? Because there are other pieces of your college application. You've been, Mim just said this morning that you talked about the college list. So you have your college list, you have your grades, you have the rigor of your college, of your high school curriculum, you have your extracurriculars, you have maybe awards, you have letters of recommendation, you have, anything that you've done outside, as well as volunteers, which is part of the extracurriculars. So you've got a lot going on, and essays are part of that component of the college application process. So I just want to make sure that we know, and everybody knows that it is part of the component. And depending on your school, some schools will place a lot on it. Some will just use it as another piece of context, right? So every school is different, but no matter what, I always tell my students, let's take each component that you have control over and do the best you can, because the essays are really 100% in your control. Everything else is kind of maybe sometimes out of your control, but essays, you can count on it. It's really about your voice and your platform. So what kind of essays are we talking about? So Mim just mentioned personal statements, that she used to read personal statements, and that's a big part of the essay. So if you're familiar with the Common App platform, which is one of the platforms that you can use to submit your applications. There's a Coalition, Common App. I don't know if anybody uses a Universal anymore. And then there's there are state portals if you're applying to the United States, of course, right? As well as Canada. And then with that, there are So for instance, the Common App, there's 7 questions. I don't know if you know, Mim, they added a new question, number 4. It's about gratitude. So that's a new question. And then the last, prompt is usually kind of design your own essay question. So you have a lot of latitude and a lot of flexibility and a lot of independence with that. Some students use a coalition. The coalition has 5 prompts, but they're pretty much interchangeable, I would say, especially because number 5 is the same thing. Design your own question, right? So those are the, so one of the kind of application essays is the personal statement. And a lot of students get really overwhelmed with that piece. And then there's something called the supplements. So supplements are determined by the college. So each college can say to a student, using the Common App or the coalition, or even, you'll see it on their websites, we want you to answer additional questions. And the classic supplement question is, why college X? So that's one of the classic ones. So those are pretty much, I would say, the type of questions. And then you have to really think about, what is the point? So I want to say that twice. What is the point? The point of the essay is really for the college admissions people to really know what you're all about. It's your time to chime in, to say, this is who I am. I am this type of person, or I am, this is all about me. And then I say that again. So I said that the college essay is about what's your point, what's your story. And the other thing is, what's your point? Like, what's the point in your essay? Like, why do you want to even mention that? That has to be clear. So that's a starting point of basically the essay. I'm going to move on, unless Min has any questions.
Nope, you keep going.
Okay, let's go. So I always go, if you want to know the point of your essay, well, really what we're saying is, give me your pitch. One of the great examples I've heard was, if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to hear about the elevator pitch. When you're in the elevator with somebody that can move and change and make a decision, you have literally, less than 6 minutes, usually about 3 minutes, to give your pitch of why they should do anything for you. That's called the elevator pitch. In the same respect, I kind of treat the essay as a pitch, but I will say that you don't just have the essay. Remember, I said the essay is part of your whole entire application. So you want to kind of think about your essay as something that can add a lot to your applications that you may not have other areas in your applications to add to. So I always go, give me your pitch. So think of it that way. The other thing is, I use an acid test with my students. The best essays are the ones, if you can imagine, you have written your essay, or maybe it's your 11th draft. I'm going to make it up. Maybe it's your 2nd draft if you're lucky, but usually it's probably about the 6th or 7th draft. You write your essay on paper and you happen to drop it in the hallway of your school. If your teacher went by, or any teacher went by, or even a student went by and picked it up and there wasn't a name on that, but they started to read your essay, would they know who you are? Would they know, oh, that essay is Mim's essay because of X, Y, and Z? Because that's what she talked about and that's who she is. Like, if I can think about the scholar athlete who's always an amazing artist, who's done X, Y, and Z, exhibits, but they're the scholar athlete, then I'm going to think of John. If that's what happens when that teacher or your friend picks up that essay on the floor, then you've done a phenomenal job. So I call it the no name test.
I love that. That's a great
idea. Isn't that a great idea? Yeah. So that's like the highest probably accolade. So if someone picks up your essay and they go, I don't know who that can be. I mean, she plays soccer and I know she's also a good student, but I don't know who that is, because there could be 5 people that look like that or that read like that. Then I would say you need to probably do another draft, because it's not unique to you. The other thing about the pitch is it's really about identity. Who am I? And that's a really tall order, isn't it? I mean, you're 17 years old and you're expected to kind of know, who am I? If you're an international student, I hear you, I feel your pain, because I know for a lot of my international students back when I was at the international school, and some now, no one really asks about who you are. No one even cares. I remember my students from China would say, Mrs. Lee, nobody cares what my favorite color is. Nobody cares how I think or what I think. They expect me to do X, Y, and Z. So this is a little different. And there is this gap where you're expected to be able to not only know who you are, but also articulate who you are, right? So that's a tall order for some international students. And I know that's probably why you may be dreading the essay, but I'm here to help you, because you just need a little bit of courage, but to know sort of the steps to get to be able to articulate who you are, right? So I always go, a good example of getting you to not have this period where you're totally blanking out and wondering, what am I going to write on about this, is to kind of understand what's going on. So if the essay is really showing who you are, I liken it to dating. Like everybody wants to date somebody, right? So when you're thinking about dating someone, let's say it's not even about you, but you're thinking about dating someone, then what are you going to want to know? You're going to want to know everything about that person, right? Who they are, maybe physically, who they are in terms of like how they think, what they're good at, what they love to do, what their family background is about, maybe what their aspirations are, maybe like, are they humorous? Are they compassionate? Are they generous? Are they the type of people that you can really count on? You want to know all these things about that person dating. So whether you're an international student or you're a domestic student and you've never thought about writing about yourself, if you were going to date somebody, you would have a list, wouldn't you? You would have a list of all the things that you're looking for and who that person is. And then on the flip side, you would want to show certain things about you. So I always try to lower the guard or lower this hesitation by thinking of it as what I call the dating essay or the good match. Think of it that way as a good start. So let's begin. So how do we do that? And I always tell my students to start with things like, what do you love? What do you care about? What do I want people to know about me? What kind of perspective do I have? But don't stop there, because we just talked about the what right now. Go from the what to the why. So I always go, don't just recount a story or a memory about the what. Let's just say I love spicy tofu, soup, Korean soup. Okay, that's great. That's a fact that you're telling me. But what about the fact that makes you unique? Why is that meaningful to you? What does it what does it represent, perhaps, right? So I always think about, I always tell my students not just to recount the memory, but reflect on it. So if I told you that spicy Korean tofu soup, every time I eat it, it causes me to remember my childhood with my experience with my grandmother, because my grandmother helped me to value my Korean heritage. And why is that important to me? Because my Korean heritage is something that was really, I suppressed for a long time because of all the racism I felt. So if I just gave you a little bit of sort of, how that spicy tofu soup triggers a whole bunch of other things about me, that's a lot more interesting than just telling you I love Korean spicy soup. Does that make sense? Right? So think about just not recounting or just telling me the facts, but reflecting on why it matters and why it's important. And then also remember who you're talking to. Like, you're not just talking to a teacher. You're not just talking to your friend. You're talking to an admissions officer, right? So that admissions officer is trying to figure out, we go back to that dating analysis or symbolism, sorry, I meant analogy, then it's about, are you a good match? So it is your opportunity to tell your story so that that admissions officer understands who you are and can actually picture you and picture you on campus. So they're trying to figure out, are you a good match for our institution? And could we see you on campus? So those are the things that you need to really think about, right? And the last thing I want to talk about is when you give me your pitch, to to talk in a way where you're authentic. I say that to my students all the time. Be authentic, authentic, authentic. Do not start to think about what is the college admissions or what does that school really want to hear, because that means you're not being authentic. And believe me, they can see through that because they read thousands of applications. So, Lynn, do you want to chime in? Do you have any experiences as well?
Yeah, I can just attest to that because I used to read hundreds of applications and their stories. And you could be like in the United States, a 4.0 is like top, right? But if you don't have a compelling story, when we're reading the stories, we feel kind of disconnected from you because you're not telling us anything about you. And like you said, Gina, exactly what you said. We want to know if you're going to do well in our school. And we say do well, not only academically, but also if you're going to fit in the culture of the school, because every school has a different culture.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like being in a different city. Paris is very different from Los Angeles. Los Angeles is different from Abu Dhabi, right? Every location has a different feel. You still got the restaurants, you still got the people, you still have the museums, but the feel is very different. So they're trying to figure out if you're a good match.
And I got to say, you know what I did a couple times, and students aren't going to want to hear this, but what I did a couple times is I sent it back to the student.
Wow.
I could tell that the student was a good student academically, but I also said, is there any way that you can tell us a little bit more about yourself? And then they did. They worked really hard, and they must have worked with a counselor because then we would get a different approach to it,
Yeah, and I think because our audience is international students, that's the part that's difficult, is to keep digging and digging and digging and digging, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. I'm going to talk about here, like, I always go in the pitch, which I'm calling the essay, right? Is like, give me your personal story. Right. And here's Snoopy. I think Snoopy is a universal dog, the beagle, where he's saying, where am I going? What am I doing? What is the meaning of life? Right. It's basically all his existential ideas of like, his thoughts and his belief and his values and like what he does. And so that's sort of what I'm talking about. Identity is to kind of start thinking about those things. And even before what I call putting words on a wall, okay, a screen, right? You're not going to literally put it on a wall, although I've done that, by the way. You're going to start really reflecting and thinking. So the first thing I would say is, how do you make something compelling, right? How do you make a story compelling? Well, think about a movie. It's all about character and plot and the visualization of that, the discussions, the dialogue, all those add layers to it, right? So the beginning point is really important. The beginning point is what I call brainstorming. You want to brainstorm different kinds of stories that you have, right? So there's different techniques to brainstorm, and you got to kind of pick and choose what works for you, or try several things. Maybe it's like figuring out, what are the things that I'm known for? That's what do people know me for? Or it could be like, what are the milestones in my life that really made a difference? Like, why do I need to share that? I have to share that about me for someone to understand me. Maybe it's like, maybe you need to like look at the essay prompts to kind of jog some thoughts. That could be another way. Maybe it's looking at your extracurriculars and and how you spend your time. Is there a commonality to that? Is there something that leaps off the page when you think about sort of who you are? Sometimes I have students that, there's some like, maybe it's like a snowflake or snow, or it's a pen, or it's like water, something that they just automatically in a matter of seconds think about when they think about themselves. And I would just jot those down. And so that's sort of the first thing is I would say, brainstorm some ideas. And the end of the day, you want them to be stories or your things that you care about that matter to you. So what matters the most? And out of all those brainstorming ideas, then take a step back and go, let me look at my entire application profile. There are things on that application profile that may already address the things that you've written on your brainstorming ideas. So if that's true, maybe you don't want to write about those things, right? So I would try to pick 2 or 3 where you feel like I really need to tell that particular story. So let's say you know your idea, you got that idea going, and then I would say then at that point, certain students do different things. Some students say, okay, I'm just going to free write, and they get on their laptops or their iPad or their computer, or even on their phone these days, right? And they just type away, like go at it. And depending on the student, I always go, don't worry about the number of words, though it's 650 maximum for the personal statements, but just keep going, like run with it. Then there are other students that cannot do that whatsoever. And so then maybe for them, you need an outline, right? So maybe that's how you get that going is you need structure. And sometimes questions really work to your benefit in that way. So once you start doing that, whether you use a structure, an outline, or whether you use free write, at the end of the day, guess what? You're still going to need an outline because you're going to find even with the free write, you're going to spend a lot of time where you don't want to spend, and you're going to you'll run out of words. So at that point, you're going to have to go back and restructure the essay anyway, even if you do the free write. So there's no going around the edit, the outline part, and no going around the edit. And I'll tell you, I always tell my students, if you're a writer, if you think you're an awful writer, it's probably because you're not. Did you hear that? I don't think you're an awful writer. It's really about editing. Writing is about editing. Edit, 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 edit nonstop. I think the record for people I've worked with, I think I did 26 edits sessions with one particular student. Okay, at the very end, it was like a word here, a word there, a phrase there. So, but the more you edit, the better. And sometimes it means if you start off really early, which you're listening to our Facebook live session. So you're starting early. So high five to you for that. But I just want to tell you that is to your benefit because you can do all these edits. And then I say, stand back, like leave it alone for a while and then come back to it. So I've done that with students where they've done various edits. They leave it for sometimes a month, and maybe they'll go do some supplements and then come back to it and have a fresh look at that, right? Okay. Now, when you do the edit process, your first draft is going to be so different than draft even 3, 4. And I don't know if, ma'am, have you worked with students on drafting different edits? Like when you said you mentioned that one student where you said you sent it back, right?
Yeah.
Because you gave them an edit, basically. You gave him an edit session. You gave him a review of, feedback, right? So he came back with it, or she came back with it, and came out 10 times better.
Definitely, yes. And I used to help, write personal statements. Not I wouldn't write them, but I'd read them to help.
Right.
And I would circle this, and they would be like, oh, but I'm like, no, it's not unacceptable. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So like if you go, maybe you get stuck. And a lot of times what happens is read them out loud. Like I always make my students read them out loud. And then you catch all the grammatical mistakes, or you go, that didn't make sense. And I said, you're right, that did make sense because it did make sense. So sometimes it's going back and what I call creating depth and substance to your edits. Like you might have a story, right? Sometimes you have the story where you've got the setup, you've got the problem, you've got the solution, maybe, and then of course, remember I said, remember the point. Like, even if you tell me the story, what's the point of you telling me the story? Right? You can't don't just give me a good story. I want to know the point of it. Like, why did it matter to you? So sometimes I'll go, let's go take a look at that. And I'll look at like, why are you telling me story? They'll give me a first draft and I go, let's go back, Sam. Why are you telling me the story? What about the story makes it meaningful for you? And sometimes it's about, what's the lesson? What was the lesson in this? Okay, you're telling me the lesson. All right, that's not enough. You got the lesson, and then so what? What's the point of that lesson, right? I always go, my students might go, oh, there she goes again. She's always asking me why or so what, but it's true. It's like, so what? What's the purpose of that lesson for you? And you're going to have to articulate that to the missions officer, because they're going to go, great story. Maybe they had a tear or two, and it was that emotional. It was that engaging. But then what's it to them? Like, what's the point of you telling me this? Okay, so I understand who you are, but can I see you on campus? Would you be a great student? What kind of value would you bring to the campus? So those are the questions I would say, make sure you don't forget that, right? So let me give you some ideas of some questions. I'm going to backtrack again, and just so that you can jot them down. One is, why does the story or experience matter to me? Okay. The second question would be, what is your aha moment? What was your insights to that story or that moment that you shared? And what did you gain from those insights? That's the what. What's the point? What did you gain from that? Right? And then, how did this experience change you? Or maybe it didn't change you, right? And then, how did you think, feel, believe differently because of that experience? So those are the really hard-hitting questions you want to make sure you answer in your essay, or else it's not compelling, to be honest. And you need to continue to then, what I call level up, like make sure that's solid. Make sure that you are clear about why that was significant in your life. Or if you care about something, for instance, why do you care about climate change? Let's say you wrote something about climate change and you went on, and you were expounding how it was important to you. Okay, great. So then what? So what? You care about it, but then what's the so what? What do you want to do with it? That's the important part again. So I can go into an example, but any questions, ma'am? Do students have any questions?
No, but
I have more to go, but
keep going because people are listening.
Okay.
I think what you said too at the end was, what are you going to do with it? You've reflected, you've shared it, but what are you going to do with it? And that's what admissions officers want to know.
Exactly. And so remember how I said that you want to look at your entire application, and essay is just a piece of it, right? So remember that. Like I always tell my students, in your mind, or even like if you do a mind map of just write all the things, like what does my extracurricular say? What does my grade say? What's my academic performance say? And then think about, is there some commonality to what I'm trying to do? Is there a thread that goes along with all of this? And, I always ask my students to think about that. So a lot of the essay part, you might be hitting a wall, or you might think it's difficult because, quite honestly, you haven't thought it all through. If you think it through, it's going to come to you. It really will. And then you've heard of some students where they wrote their essay at the very end and they just like put it all together and they were just fiercely writing. That's true. That does happen once in a while. But if you really want to spend time making it compelling, you got to do the legwork way in the beginning. So I'll give you an example. I have an international student, and she gave me permission to share this. So she's a Russian student of mine that came to my school. a couple years back, and now she's actually graduating. So it's great to see her from like when she was 14 all the way to now. And she wanted to write her essay. She was basically, Mrs. Lee, I don't know what to do, what to think about. And so I said, start with like who you think you are. Like, what are some adjectives? And so we started brainstorming. But when I think about her, so sometimes having that second person, whether it's your parent, but maybe it's also someone who doesn't know you as well, who have interactions with you, but don't know you as well as your parents, or don't know as well as, let's say, your best friend. And sometimes asking them, what do you know about me? What do you think about me? Right. So for me, with my student, I knew her well, but not as well as her best friend, and certainly not as well as her mom. And the thoughts that I had in my mind was, when I was thinking about helping her, was these words: that she was fierce, she was determined, and she was an agent of change. And the reason why I brought those three ideas really came to mind was because this girl was a go-getter. She actually was young. She was 1 year younger than most of our high school kids coming in at 10th grade at that point, coming at 10th grade. So she was 14 and coming in at 10th grade, but she was this real fierce go-getter, and she was courageous. So those are the words I thought about. And then I said to her, what is it about? Is there a story that kind of talks about who you are, your background? Like, you're Russian, you came to our school on a full scholarship, you're a real go-getter, you tend to like launch new projects, or she's this Russian student, she launched a Chinese club. Can you believe that? It's awesome, right? She not only launched it, but she created all of these like trips, and she created like these how to make dumpling day and celebrating Chinese New Year. And though she knew some about how to do those things, she really didn't know a lot, right? So she actually spent time investigating that. So that's just who she is. So then I said, okay, is there a story that would cover sort of like who you are and how you've transformed, but also talk about your character? So she came up with this idea about wrapped around, she did something called, we had something called global studies capstone projects. And so she wrote a story about that, her process of literally going through figuring out the subject, and then going through doing the research, and then coming out of the research as a changed person. Now I'm just giving you the facts, so it doesn't sound spectacular, right? But the way she told the story was, she said basically, I'm not even a global study type of person. I'm a STEM kid. I came to the school with STEM. But because of the assignment she had to do something that she was not comfortable with. And then it turns out that the only thing that she could kind of relate to was the Crimean-Ukrainian crisis, right? So here she's a Russian student, she's in the United States, and she doesn't have to deal with any of the censorship. So then she takes the subject and she starts to really plow through it. And as she's plowing through the subject matter, she's getting surprised, and she's going through unbelief, because she's thinking, wow, I believed in my Russian country and I was so pro my country, yet on the outside I'm seeing something different. And she's like, there's no way there's no way this research is true. She went from not believing to start to uncover more and more, and be uncomfortable with opposing opinions, but then she had to be open-minded. And she talks about this emotional struggle she was going through. She was having an identity crisis actually through this topic, right? So the assignment is just the what. The real story was about this identity crisis she was having, of trying to be this pro-loyal Russian kid, and then understanding, wait a second, there's more to the story. And as she evolves, her story becomes where she has breakthrough. She starts to change and transform her way of thinking. And then she talks about how that mattered and where her conclusion came to. So at the end of the day, she changed her belief, her values. And then she said, I'm ready to do this more somewhere else, at another institution, at another place where I'm going to be in a group, in a college where I'm going to be surrounded by many people. Okay. So I always go, what's the point? So I share this off the cuff. I'm sharing the story off the cuff, but I did write something like, in her story, what's the cuff? What's the point? And so I'm going to just kind of quote her a little bit. She says, my curiosity and determination to seek the truth led me to be open-minded to diverging views, uncomfortable and wrestling with opposing views, and continue to challenge myself to be more observant and learn that every problem has multiple sides. As I enter college, I want to be in a community that values all opinions, that wants to grapple with the world's problems and look at ways to solve them. So you kind of get the what's the point, right, of what she wrote. And I think that is a very good way to summarize it. Like, I didn't give you all the details, of course. We would be on this for a long time, but I just wanted to give you a little picture of like, what's the point of the essay? It needs to be there, right? Yeah.
So her ending gave me goosebumps. Can I just ask you, where did she go to college? Can I ask you that?
Sure. So she wanted to go to the best schools, but I will tell you that she needed financial aid, 100% financial aid. And if you are an international student that needs 100% financial aid, is very difficult to find, right? So, I mean, there's some out there, but it's super hard to find. So she wanted to go to the top schools, and she had the background to do it, but she ended up going to a great school. I'll say it to you. She went to Bryn Mawr on a near full ride. She's graduating from Bryn Mawr, and she's going to be working on Wall Street. So she is this one person, and she just, the way she was in high school was what she ended up doing at Bryn Mawr College. So she really was what I just said. She's fierce, she's determined, and she was an agent of change. She created a humongous consulting group at Bryn Mawr. It never existed, but that's just who she is. So that's what she wrote about, and I'm really proud of her. But
thank you for sharing that. She's remarkable. So tell
her. Thanks. So going back to like her, so when I work with her a little bit about the whole story, I always go, her her fake name is Nicola. So I always go, Nicola, give me a sentence, a tagline on, at the end of the day, when you do all your essays and all your application, what is something that you should be saying about yourself? What should this admission officer feel and know about you, right? So I usually tell my students that if you can give a tagline or some description in one sentence, that's a really good essay or a really good application. So I actually wrote something about her. I just wrote, Nicola, the Russian international boarding girl who was forced to question her government, but learned that seeking truth requires being uncomfortable. So, that's just a way for me to like put into words what her essay was really about and who she is. So I hope that helps. If you can do that, that is like one of the best ways to make it super compelling, because that's what you want the admissions officers to be left with, is like, at the end of the day, they're going to think of like a couple of words, a couple of descriptions, and a feeling.
Yeah, it's the feeling, actually.
Right?
And they'll share, if it's really good, they'll share it with others.
They will. Yeah, when I meet with the admissions office, I would go, one year I said to a Cornell officer, what's the best essay you've read? And they said it was about someone's hair. Another person said it was about a slug. I said, really, a slug? I don't know if you know what a slug is, but it's not, it's kind of gross, it's the insect. And he said, yeah, slug. So you don't have to have these like spectacular experiences that are going to just change and transform you. No, it's really about like something really about you. So if a slug represents somehow you and you can talk about what the slug is and what that means to you and how you relate to it, go for it, right? And then Mim, if I can add one more thing, I was just going to do sort of like, what's the pitfalls, right? So I said, what's the point? What's your pitch? What's your personal story? And then what's the pitfalls, right? So remember, try to remember, don't try to impress anybody. Like, this is your story. Like, say this is who you are. You don't need to impress the missions officer because that's actually going to create no voice or not your voice, right? And then I always go drop the overused topics. So admissions officers, like Mim just said, read thousands of applications. Okay, so how many stories can you read where, oh, at the last second the buzzer was about to go and I threw the basketball and it went into the hoop and it went in, right? They've heard so many of those kind of stories. So I just go, maybe not, right? Or it could be my grandfather or grandmother. I mean, bless their soul. I'm not trying to make any light of that, but they read a lot about the tragedy of a parent. I'm not sorry, of a grandparent, passing away. And that I just go, there's probably better stories than that.
You brought that up because that was over and over again. It was the grandparent, and I know that Asian, we're both Asian. That's family is very, very important. It's like the most important thing.
It is.
But try to reflect on, like you said, other things.
Because they read thousands, right? They read thousands. Yeah. And then like maybe that, oh, I had a C or D in the class and then I worked really hard and I got pulled an A- at the very end. I would say there's other stories to you because you know what? You could see it on your transcripts, perhaps, right? Or maybe it's in a supplement, but even that, I'm like, let's stay away from that topic. Maybe it's like your travel or vacation trip or volunteer or mission trip. There's another one that's overwritten too many times. I would say don't talk about your dating life. I don't think that's a great topic, unless you can, change my mind. I'm being open-minded. I'll be open-minded, but the dating topic's not that great. And maybe some religion things. I don't know. I have read one that was pretty compelling, but it was about sort of astrology and philosophy and religion wrapped into one. It wasn't just about religion. So I would say drop the overused topics, keep going, keep brainstorming more. And then I call it the unbalanced essay. There's another one. I use this analogy of the hamburger, okay, where there's like 2 buns and there's meat in your essay. I'm talking about the structure. So the hamburger bun on top, is the setup of your story or the setup. If it's really heavy, who wants to eat a hamburger with really all bread? Okay, maybe there's a few, but most of us want to get to the meat, like the crux of what's the point, right? The crux of the story. So if you're a low carb person, which most people are these days, I even like chop the bread in half because it's too many calories. It's unneeded. So I would say be careful of not spending too much of your words talking about the setup of the story, right? A lot of times I go for it, write it all out. And I go to the edit section. I go, okay, let's lop it. There's a bread. It's going. Let's cut that out and start the story even in the middle of the story. I've done that with students too. So be careful of the unbalanced essay. And then I always go, answer the question, please, right? Sometimes you don't answer the question. And so here's an example of this. All right. The new Common App essay is a new one. It says, reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. How has this gratitude affected or motivated you? Okay. Here's the thing. That question, the theme is gratitude, but the twist is really important. It says to tell me about something that made you happier and thankful in a surprising way. Did you catch that? That's the twist. So they're not looking for, hey, somebody, I was sick and somebody brought me, soup, right? That was nice, but that's not what they're looking for. Maybe it's like you saying, like somebody, like maybe somebody did you a disfavor, right? Someone, maybe, I don't know, didn't do something or blamed you for something. And then you had to like stand up for yourself because you had to. And so that began a reflection of like, oh my goodness, I have to start standing up for myself. I have to be an agent for myself. I have to like talk. And that situation, while it wasn't very nice that someone, said something bad about you, but that was actually a moment of gratefulness. Because of that, you are now more cognizant of your responsibility to speak up for yourself. See, that's a little different than someone doing something nice for you, right? So it's in a surprising way. So I always go, yes, the obvious is you got to answer the questions, but sometimes you got to read the whole question entirely, not just a piece of it. Does that make sense?
And read it several times.
And read it several times, right? And then finally, you got to check your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation mistakes, right? I mean, I don't know, Mim, if you've heard this, where kids put in one college name and forget to take it out and switch it into another college name. Well, that's not punctuation, but
I've had that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That kind of goes into the garbage.
You know what happens? That application is gone.
Yep, it's gonzo, right? If it happens, it's unfortunate, but if you just look at it a little bit one more time or the next day, but grammar, spelling, punctuation, that's something that because they want to know, especially for international students, can you write? Well, maybe not just international students, everybody. You gave me a great story. Can you write? Can you articulate? And again, saying that essay out loud does wonders. It really does. Yeah. So that's sort of it for me. Is there questions that people might have?
No, but we've had a lot of people watching. If you have any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll just wait about 1 minute or two and see if anyone asks questions. But you have given a ton of information that is super helpful on how to get started on, and the pitfalls. The pitfalls are great, but how to get started in writing an essay because of the reflection. I think, okay, I'm just going to say it's really hard sometimes for students, myself included, to write about myself because it seems braggy, sort of, in a way. So then you got to get over that, because what I think is there's only one of you. There's only one unique you. And so you have a story. It's just taking the time. And what you said too was the mapping and reflecting, because the mapping will help you. It's a visual to reflect on all the things you've done. And then, like you said, is there a trend there that you see?
Mm-hmm.
That's helpful. And it's also, I think it's just really important to just remember, again, you're unique. You have a story, and you have a story unlike anybody else.
Yeah. And I think that's the key is if you are finding that if your story is not unique, then I would say you're not digging far enough, and you're not looking at it enough. And for international students, you guys have such a rich background, right? There's cultural things that you can share that is who you are, part of your heritage, part of who you are. And guess what? That's what the colleges want. They want to have a diverse community. They don't want, a fake kid that tries to act American. No, they want you. I mean, they want your authentic voice, because you add something to the dynamic of the college, to the dynamic of the class, in the classroom and outside the classroom. Probably more outside the classroom. You're going to spend a lot more time outside, right? So be you and celebrate you. Like, one of the most wonderful things working at an international school when I was there was I learned so much about people. Yes, okay, I was a teacher, I was a dean, I was a college counselor, but every day I would say I was a student, right? I miss that part of being around international students, because there's so many things that each student taught me. So remember, you are valued for who you are. So pick up that mantle, pick up that piece and say, let me share that with you. But don't just share your culture, share what about it's meaningful to you and what about it makes you you.
Yeah, and don't be ashamed of it.
Yes, absolutely. Don't be ashamed of it.
I don't see any questions. Do you have anything else that you want to share? Because this has been amazing. And I just want to say thank you. Also, students, if you want to contact Gina,
I'm going to show you right here.
Yep.
So I am actually, it's limited seating because there's not a lot of spots, but I'm actually going to be doing a co-teaching essay workshop with the former USC admissions officer in June. I'm probably going to do it again in August. So this is limited seating, but if you can't get on, then we're probably going to do it in August again. But you can go on my website. It's not on there right now. It's fresh off the press, but there is this form that you can fill in, say, hey, Gina, I saw you on Study USA, and I would love to find out more information about your essay workshop. And that's where I would say.
Is it free?
It's not. It's $300. It is not free. Yeah, but it's pretty intensive. It's an intensive program, and we are hoping that by the time you're done with it, you'll have at least one draft of your Common App essay or your coalition.
Oh, I see. There's the price.
Yeah, there's a price. Okay.
Well worth your time. And also, if you want to, contact Gina to get extra, she's got that form there. Keep scrolling
on my website,
and then you can fill out the form. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. This is great.
Everybody take a
picture. Wonderful.
And go to her site so that you've got it there. It's in your phone now. Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, wow, thank you so much. I see Rupayan, Rahnar, Prem, Kagani, Donna, thank you so much. There's a bunch of students on here. Sweta, Aberder Haim, thank you. Aaron, there's just so many. So thank you so much for coming on today. And Gina, again, thank you for taking the time and giving this wealth of information.
Thank you for having me. This was phenomenal. And thank you for studying the USA. Go for it. Go on their website and check them out as well.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks. Have a good evening.
Okay. Bye-bye.